I've reflected a lot on that. I don't know if that's like the end all be all to when you're ready to be in a relationship, but I do see the importance of being able to advocate for yourself. When we talk about in the healing process, you're like, give yourself love, give yourself confidence. I think that's cool and all, but I think what you're stating are emotions. They're not actionable. It's just, they're adjectives. They're like feelings. Well, they're not adjectives, they're nouns. I'm not good at grammar. In Chinese is my first language, so someone fact check me on that. Welcome back to the TTYL podcast. I am your host, Adrian, and I'm not with my co-host today because Sarah is just taking a 1 week break. I promise we will be back with the two of us doing more consistent stuff. It's just been kind of a whirlwind of things happening to us, but I promise we'll be back soon. We already have a bunch of guest episodes planned out, so hold us accountable, guys. Alright, so I'm doing a solo episode today. If you haven't watched Sarah's solo episode from when I had norovirus, go check that out. Very insightful, very fruitful things said. And I'm going to try to do my best to build off of that momentum. When presented with the idea of deciding what I wanted to talk about, Rebecca, funny enough, was like, you want to talk about the gym? And I was like, hell no. I enjoy fitness. I enjoy like the physical therapy stuff, but bruh, like going to the gym is just going to the gym, you know, mental health, physical health. TLDR, if you're not lifting, go lift. If you're not running, go run. Physical activity is good. But yeah, I juggled a couple topics in mind. And originally I was actually going to talk about my faith and my testimony because our God episode from like months back, that was a whole interesting conversation that Sarah and I had, and engagement with the community was fun, but I don't want to brand this as a Christian podcast. I think these social media stuff, you need to have an identity of some sort, and I still want to stick to who we are just as people, right? So I today am going to offer my opinion and kind of my lived lessons on things I learned about love. These are kind of things that I've been thinking about recently and just kind of thinking about, you know, ever since I started dating Rebecca and even going back to when I was doing therapy while I was still in grad school. So I kind of hope this session isn't, I'm not trying to teach anybody anything. This is more of like a journal entry for me. I have everything kind of written in my book. And I just hope that if anyone listens to this and they find it, they learn something, like cool. But it's more so about opening up the discussion because I think love is a complex, sadly, it's a really relevant topic in our mid-20s because parents are asking when you're getting married or everyone's dating. And yeah, I think let's yap a little and just see what happens. Oh, and before I say anything, I'm currently reading this book called Conversations on Love. It's by Natasha Lunn. Basically, she goes interviewing these different psychologists, these different kind of prominent figures in their respective fields. And I've been reading it recently, so I feel like if what I say kind of sounds familiar, like similar to the book, and you're just going to be like, you're plagiarizing the book. No, I'm not. The book inspired me. It's just, I think the book did a very good job of kind of articulating what I've been thinking about. So yeah, whatever I say that's from the book, I will quote the book, I will cite the book, and we'll leave it at that. Okay. Lesson 1. You don't need to be healed to be in a relationship. You need to be able to articulate and advocate for yourself. I feel like when someone breaks up, the initial attitude or help is, I'm not going to date till I'm healed. I'm going to go to therapy and heal. I'm going to do this self-discovery journey, making my own journey. I liked that breaking up with someone and having that gave me a goal, but I didn't like the fact that the word healing is very, very like an umbrella term. There's no kind of direction, right? And even like you go to therapy, a lot of it's working on your insecurities, and I think that's great, but in terms of the word, you're not ready to date till you're healed. That's a very, very vague statement, right? So that's why I love that the book mentioned the part of being able to articulate and advocate for yourself. And I've reflected a lot on that. I don't know if that's like the end all be all to when you're ready to be in a relationship, but I do see the importance of being able to advocate for yourself. When we talk about in the healing process, you're like, give yourself love, give yourself confidence. I think that's cool and all, but I think what you're stating are emotions. They're not actionable. It's just they're adjectives. They're like feelings. Well, they're not adjectives. They're nouns. I'm not good at grammar. Chinese is my first language, so someone fact check me on that. But instead, I had to learn that giving love to me meant, for example, giving myself like self-care days. So that's why I think the gym has been such a good outlet for me to be able to do that. And just talking to some of my other friends, other ways they show love is take themselves on solo dates, a little shopping spree here and there. What love is different for every single person. But the important thing is that you're able to draw something actionable from it. The second part of that was like confidence. What does confidence look like for me, right? To give yourself confidence. For me, it was expanding my style, exploring my style, dressing in a way that makes me feel happy, that makes me feel seen. It's a form of expression, right? So those to me were like kind of the fuzzy stuff paired with like, I don't want to say solid, like tangible action, tangible items. The reason why I think this is important to me, a healthy relationship, the one biggest thing that we have to kind of acknowledge as we're getting older, as we're jumping into these relationships, is that conflict is inevitable. In reality, a relationship is really two complete different human beings, complete separate identities. Rarely do I meet a couple with the two like MBTI or the same like horoscopes, right? You're taking these two things and basically you're smashing it together to build a life together. So naturally, as two separate people, you have different perspectives on life, you have different ways you do things, different habits and whatnot, and conflict is inevitable. I feel like as a kid, you learn that like the banter and whatnot, the chemistry and whatnot, it's like all cutesy and stuff, and like it might be what starts the relationship, but now you're hearing more about it's how you manage your conflicts. That's why we talk a lot about attachment styles, the secure attachment, anxious, avoidant, all that stuff, right? Because at the end of the day, what makes a relationship continue is not necessarily about how much chemistry you had or how good he makes you feel. It's your ability to get through an issue together and solving it in a way that's healthy. So I think back to my past relationships. I think about what my response will be to all of these things. Surprisingly, I am secure according to the quiz. I somehow don't believe that because I've mentioned my childhood trauma before. It's there. Not that trauma always equals not secure, but I'm a little confused by it. Anyways, I've noticed in the past when I've kind of talk to my partners and whatnot. Let's say something happens, right? It doesn't have to be bad. It just could be she was late for a date or she forgot to wish me happy anniversary and whatnot. And a lot of times I would go up to her and be like, oh, this is how I'm feeling. Kind of right now, I'm realizing for myself too, like that statement almost does, I don't want to say it does nothing. I think it is a first step to having a conversation, but a lot of times I wouldn't say anything else, and that was it. I'm sad. And a lot of times when you bring up conflict, you're almost expecting a solution, right? As a couple, you want to move forward together to move forward, right? But a lot of times when you aren't able to articulate specifically what you're saying besides just an emotion, that leaves your partner in like a confused state. They don't know how to support you. They don't know how to make things better. And a lot of times in the middle of these conversations where emotions are heightened, when things are still fresh, like you say I'm sad and you're like, okay, like you validate them and whatnot, but first thing you should always validate your partner. But the second part of it, I think, is where we're not as good as, is which is coming to a solution. I understand that whoever brings up a problem or stuff like that, it's hard for them to come with a solution too. I'm trying to figure out how to articulate this. I'm also having trouble talking about this. I feel like something that long-term relationships fall into is I know her, I know your habits, I know what you're thinking, and these are the things that will make you feel better and whatnot. But I think we forget that people are changing in these relationships too. Maybe the core of it has not changed, like who you are as Adrian or whoever you are. But just the fact that the periphery stuff is changing, that does change you as a person. In terms of the word like processing specifically, processing cannot just stop at the emotional state that you're feeling. I think processing doesn't finish until you are able to have an actionable plan. I'm saying an actionable plan a lot, but I think this is what works for me. Like, love to me is being able to have your emotion, have your feelings, but also have space for what we're going to do next to move forward. I think the more that we exist in kind of that limbo of between emotions and moving forward, that breeds this grounds for like insecurity, for confusion, for all these other negative emotions. And yeah, I think that's why Rebecca and I implement the talk once a month thing. I remember there were some comments about like how you guys only talk once a month. And no, it's not that we only talk once a month about our emotions. Is we put extra time into reflecting to ourselves so that whenever we have this conversation, we're able to give each other constructive feedback and find a way to preserve our relationship moving forward. So yeah, that is lesson 1. I think you need to be able to articulate and advocate for yourself. Alrighty. I'm going to talk more about this second point, I guess, and it kind of relates to the first part. One thing I wish that someone had told me when I had first broken up with my previous relationship was, when you say get to know yourself, it's a little confusing still, you know? So instead of saying that, I recommend develop a relationship with yourself. Going back to kind of the other point that I said about your partner knowing you and whatnot, in my kind of like age range, most relationships are about, if they're beautiful and long, I have met people in like 10-year relationships. I've also met people in 2-year relationships that are considered long. But in reality, the only person that truly knows what you are thinking is yourself. So I never thought of it that way because I was like, I didn't really come into consciousness of like who I am as a person until like I was like 5th. Okay, that's a little dramatic, but like, it's like when you are growing up, you kind of just like float through life, right? And then you process your childhood trauma later, and then you're like, oh shit, I'm like a highly traumatized person, and that becomes your identity. And that's like maybe your teenage angst age, right? But there comes a certain point where I'm 26, and having developed this relationship with myself, it's kind of like giving like validation to everything that happened before, right? I think the most important thing is that you need to have that relationship with yourself and truly know yourself and know what you want. Often, I feel like we're taught to not trust that voice in our brain. I feel like I would recommend differently. I think trust that voice in your brain a little more and give yourself a little more credit. But the biggest thing is that this isn't something that you can just start doing. I think it's something you need to develop and exercise. It's something that you need to spend time with yourself and to truly understand what you want. When I talk about that core identity and that peripheral stuff, we do a really good job of establishing our peripheral stuff, you know? Like, our identity is tied in our work, tied in our hobbies. Like, I'm a physical therapist that goes to the gym, I go to church, I do a podcast on the side as a hobby. But what about like yourself specifically? Do you recognize, you know? And I think that took me a very long time to recognize. And I would even say that like before Rebecca, I truly understood that. Or I think Rebecca's doing a really good job of facilitating that for me. And so I don't know if I want to share that yet because it's really vulnerable to me. And also it is an ongoing process, just me learning more about myself. Because at the end of the day, when you talk to your partner, no matter if it's a good thing or bad thing, there's 2 different realities that exist in that equation. One thing is your reality about yourself. The second thing is their reality about yourself. In an unhealthy relationship where there's like a power dynamic or an imbalance, it's really easy to give up your reality for someone else's reality for the sake of the relationship. But often there are times I feel like when you have to be able to give yourself that power back. It doesn't matter what your partner says if that doesn't align with what you believe about yourself. And when I say that, I'm not saying like to be Delulu or whatnot. This is after like a tedious process of understanding your morals and your values. If your partner's reality does not align with that, you shouldn't change your reality to fit theirs. You should stand up for what you believe is your reality. Like at the end of the day, they're dating you not because you are them. They're dating you because of you. And I can understand how it's like we're supposed to form one life. We're supposed to be together and, you know, be one cohesive unit. whatever that means. But it doesn't change the fact that you are your own separate person. I'm going to bring up two analogies. One is from way back then in Purdue when we watched this guy named Daniel Sloss. He's this, I forgot where he's from exactly, but he's this comedian. And then we basically talk about how Daniel Sloss had this kind of analogy for kind of like two people coming together. You're given puzzle pieces from birth, and basically you have your core piece, and then you kind of put everything all around it. You're building up your picture, you're building up your picture, you're building up your picture, and one day you meet someone else. Obviously you have missing pieces in your own puzzle, right? And part of it is you expect that person to fit their piece into your puzzle, when in reality that person is also bringing his own puzzle to the table. So what has to happen is that you take away certain pieces of your puzzle, and he takes away certain pieces of his puzzle, and you end up building a new puzzle together. It's just a reminder that you are so much more than your relationship. Your baggage, your wins, your losses, your every single event that you've gone through, that is what makes you. And you should never change whatever that is or change who that is to match someone else for the sake of a relationship. Lesson 3 that I want to talk about is love does not exist on a dichotomy. What I mean by that is I don't think love is supposed to be something so black and white. I think the onset of social media, TikTok and whatnot, it's really made it seem like there's one right thing to do and one wrong thing to do. Some of the TikTok love advice is if he texts you late, he doesn't care. Or if he doesn't pay for your food, he doesn't care. And it's just such a simplistic way to think about something like love. You're essentially cramming this, I don't know what to describe it, this emotion, this feeling into a box and saying there's a black and there's a white, when in reality it's a spectrum of things. Even thinking about like what love is in itself, I think it's really hard to describe, right? As a kid, you kind of grow up and you're like, oh, like it's this lovey-dovey like butterfly feeling that's like, oh, it's like I just love him, like I just care for him. Like a lot of times, even in our adulthood, it's so hard to come up and personally like capture like what it is, right? And a lot of times like it's easier to just say like what actionable things you see from love, right? Like my boyfriend takes care of me when I'm sick, or just like stuff like that. So I want to try to get away from that definition of what is right and what's wrong in love. Now don't get me wrong, there are obviously boundaries to that, and there are obviously like bad things to that. If someone disrespects you, that's wrong. If someone negative things, basically, if your partner talks shit about you, if they cheat on you, those things are obviously bad. But I think we get so caught up sometimes in like the small details of, I don't know if they're gonna like this gift over that gift, or I don't know if I'm making the right decision by dating this man because X, Y, Z. Instead, like, love to me right now, there's a sense of I don't have control of it. There's a sense of like feeling small and like being humbled, because at the end of the day, I think whatever you believe in, whether it's like God or you believe in like just life, we're so small compared to whatever that thing is, like no matter what decision you make, I believe that your relationship is going to run its course. And at the end of the day, like it is what it is. Let me rephrase this. I think there are many times for those who have been in a history of relationships, at the point of your breakup, you're like, oh my God, like it's going to end. This is over for me. Like, I don't know if I'm ever going to find love again. But every single time you heal, you bounce back, and you meet someone greater, and you never think about your ex again. The other part of that is, instead of nitpicking the small things and deciding in like the real time, like what is right, what is wrong, these what I would call like smaller decisions that maybe aren't as important, I think it's important to just remember that you are in love, and that itself is such a valuable experience. I know people who've never had a relationship before and have never experienced like deep romantic love. I just want to preface, love can exist in different forms and different formats. One thing is like friendship love. A little different from romantic love, but friendship love also exists. Love with your parents, that's a whole other thing. Even love for like a dog or like a pet or something, right? But if you have been in a relationship before and you've said I love you to someone and you've truly developed that bond, and even if you didn't finish the puzzle with that person, you started building pieces by pieces by pieces, how lucky are you to have even experienced that? I don't think love is the ultimate emotion. I don't even know what that answer to that is. But we as a society hold it in such high, like such a significant thing, right? Like you don't just say I love you. You say I love you whenever you feel ready. Again, like whatever that means, right? So yeah, it's just when you get caught up into like the nitty gritty stuff of what is right, what is wrong. I don't want to say what is right, what is wrong. There is a right and wrong. Maybe what is better and what is worse, or who is healed and who isn't healed, right? Like at the end of the day, everyone has their own baggage. Everyone has their puzzle pieces. It's just up to you if you want to choose to build that puzzle with them. And at some point, you just have to believe, like, it is what it is, right? Oh, one quote that is from the book that I really, really like. Love isn't like kind of the means to a life that you want. And so instead of looking forward for love, just look at this moment in time as really just an opportunity and possibility. And I think when you think about love like that, or even if you think about life like that, it's so much more rewarding living this life, knowing that you're constantly moving forward, that these things that you're doing is for yourself. You shouldn't ever live your life for anybody else. Always hold yourself in high regard. But yeah, this is a relatively short episode, but I think it's nice to come on here and really talk about what I've been thinking about and my emotions. Rebecca and I are coming upon 1 year this weekend, so it's really exciting to reflect on our journeys and reflect on who we were before the relationship, who we are during a relationship, and who we will be in the coming relationships. TLDR of this podcast is really learn to love yourself and respect yourself and give yourself patience, give yourself love, take yourself on dates, really be your own cheerleader, because at the end of the day, only you truly know who you are and truly what you want. It's funny when it comes to like these things, I'm so like fuck you, or like I'm on your side. Like I'm so like on the polar opposite spectrums. I don't like to exist in the middle. Like I love to take sides, right? Be on your own side. So like really be on your side to support yourself. You should never ever have to take disrespect from someone. Never ever have to put up with someone's bullshit. Know what those boundaries and set them so firm that you're able to protect yourself and move on if you need to. The last thing I just want to kind of caution again is, wow, this is truly just like scatterbrain talk. One thing that I really had to work on was needing love. I think one part of therapy was that it makes you hyper independent. So I had come out of therapy like healed, and I was like, I don't need any of this relationship stuff. I don't need a partner to be with. I want to live for me, myself, and I. And honestly, truly, that sounded amazing. But also, we just need to remember, it's like we are social animals. We need community. Like Rebecca has really softened my heart and changed my perspectives on a lot of things. And those were things that I would not have been able to achieve without her. And so that just goes back to say, it's like, I don't know what it says. I often find myself in like a very, very like eloquent, like I'm speaking like very eloquently, and then I'll stumble and then I'll just lose all of my momentum. Funny story, one time I was giving a presentation in grad school, and literally this is my senior project. And then my partner, he answers the professor's question like absolutely beautiful, absolutely amazing. And then he literally calls me out. He's like, Adrian, what do you think? And I'm like listening to him, and I'm having like this amazing and thought-provoking answer ready for him. And then like I open my mouth, and I literally just like my mouth is open for maybe a good 5 to 10 minutes. And the whole class is looking at me. And then my partner stepped in to answer for me. There goes my one ADHD story of the week. But yeah, all in all, I hope that this podcast, you learn a little something about me. These are my perspectives and my opinions. I love the book that I'm reading right now, Conversations on Love. If you've wanted to take kind of a deeper dive on the topic of love, and it's not just romantic love it talks about kind of everything, grief, talks about family love and all that stuff. I highly recommend the book. I'm only like 20 pages in. The only thing holding me back is my sleepiness and tiredness from work. I try to read it, but then I fall asleep. Some of my friends recommended it, and they said it was the most insightful book they've ever read in 2024. So it's a good book. Check it out. Natasha Lund, you are doing amazing things. If anybody has or disagrees with me, I would love to hear. I think the whole point, again, is love is not supposed to be, there is no one-all-fits-all definition for it. It's going to look different for every single person, depending on culture, lived experiences, And if you disagree with me or want to validate me, I would love to hear about your perspective, because I know who I am and the way I see, like, not even just love, the world, the way I see the world is changing every passing day almost. Yeah, drop in the comments what you think I said sucked. And if you've made it this far, thank you for keeping up with my ADHD-ness. So drop in the comments what you think love is and what are maybe some tidbits that have worked for you. Again, like Sarah and I just want to create this community where we can just talk to each other. This is what you would get from me if you were to FaceTime me and had intense heartbreak. This is authentically me. So if you feel safe enough, drop in the comments and be authentically you. Like, I and Sarah would love to hear from you. Whoever you are, wherever you are, we're always looking for ways to grow this community. All in all, like, I love you guys. It's been interesting doing this solo podcast episode. I'd love to talk about my testimony one day. It would be way more streamlined and way more focused. I'm trying to be like very professional. This is giving kind of like when I'm in clinic and I like talk without ums and likes and pauses. But yeah, thank you for listening. If you've made it this far, it helps a lot when you like and subscribe to the video. If I know you in person, you want to dap me up or slap me, go for it. I love everything, but the support has been amazing. And Sarah and I, no matter how tired we are, this is kind of like our fix. We love doing this. It's for ourselves, but we also recognize that we do have like a tiny, tiny audience. So yeah, I promise you, we're coming back to being more consistent. We're coming back with more guests. We're coming back with more topics. If you know us in person or you have our IG or even in comment section, leave what you would like to talk about. And if it's a topic we're not familiar with, we're more than happy to do our research and figure things out. Well, this is the end of the podcast episode. And yeah, I hope you guys are all doing good. I hope that life is good with you guys. If you haven't found love yet, know that it's coming to you. And if you are in love with someone, understand what an experience it is to just even experience that. And if you are in a troubled situation, I just remind you that hold yourself to the highest regard. You deserve nothing more than the best for yourself. Do not gaslight yourself into thinking that this is the best, this is all that it can be. I promise you, no matter what happens, when you move on or move out, whether you find love again, you will be happier. You will become something that it's hard for you to fathom, but somehow I feel like life or God or whatever you believe in has got you. Okay. That all being said, cheesy side of said, this has been a fun episode and we'll see you around. With that, TTYL.